Hi, you guys. Just wanted to tell you what I thought about the microbiology course and how to try to survive it. um, I think of this more as an audio file. I do have some visuals on these other screens, but this main screen of typing, don't try to keep up with me on. It's not for you to read, really. It's for me to read. I wrote it a long time ago to try to help a friend with microbiology. So you're going to start with the bug parade, and it's really daunting. Everybody thinks it's daunting, and it is. It's all of a sudden you need to just like be making brand new memories in your brain that need to trigger, 5 other things all at the same time, and they're all new words, and it's really hard. So I'm going to try to help you design it in your mind in a way that's a little bit smaller, not getting lost too far down on any given outline where you're likely to get confused, and just trying to keep it as simple as possible. It's a challenge. I don't think there's an easy way to do this, but you can do it. A lot of people, and me included, did well with silly stories, and I have images that flash into my brain right now for like Campylobacter jejuni and being by a campfire and the things that are going on by the campfire, and listeria, like there's a refrigerator and a piece of paper is tumbling out of it because there's tumbling motility with listeria, and let's see, the fish in the vagina garden for Gardnerella vaginalis, and all these different stories that I can tell you that those little mental images that I have are valuable, and they're definitely worth points on your tests and on step 1. I think some people invested in those stories more than others, and I wish I had invested in those silly stories more. The challenge is, I'll tell you, when you're making those kind of stories, is to know what should I include in it, because if you try to remember from the angle of the bug, this is like a big soapbox for me. If I'm approaching from the angle of the bug right now, and then am I going to try to include in my story that this bug is urease negative and catalase positive and whatever sort of test, I'm generally not going to do that. The things that I'm going to build into my stories are the specific facts. The non-specific facts, which are so often just a test. For instance, like when they say catalase positive, well, why do we ever talk about catalase positive or catalase negative? Well, we have a test. We can ask the question, is this bug catalase positive or is it catalase negative? And it can help us a lot with distinction, obviously. And so I really recommend not getting lost in the world of trying to memorize from the angle of the bug. Is this thing urease positive, is it oxidase positive, and trying to build that into your unique little stories. Make unique little stories about unique facts about a bug, okay? Like Francisella tularensis, just think of Francis the rabbit, and like that's a pretty good, if he's making a black eschar on somebody's skin, that's a good mental image to have, But the fact that that's a gram-negative rod, I believe, is not something that you need to be building into that story. You're going to learn your gram-negative rods and your gram-positive rods by where they are on your map. So I'm going to, I guess, kind of break it into different angles to approach the different clumps of information. So you could kind of say your 3 clumps of information here, and I'm just kind of freestyling it a little bit here, but it are bugs themselves, bugs with unique features, and then the other big clump of information would be their algorithmic classification. Affectionately just known as maps. Like, where does this thing land on your map of microbiology? So here are my maps that I made for the year. You need to make your own. You can pause this and try to copy mine if you want. Dr. Salcedo is a genius map maker, and he gives you good theories about why to organize your map a certain way. Try to get his PowerPoint from somebody ahead of time. The sooner you make good maps, the better. But so anyway, I was here, bugs with unique features, algorithmic classifications, and then tests. Okay, so by tests I mean like, is it urease, catalase, different tests you can run. Is it gram? Well, I'm really gram positive, gram neg. I kind of made that its own section here because that's really what your algorithmic classification is generally about. So you could make this one section and just say you have bugs with unique features and algorithms in general. I guess that's really kind of what it is. But for practical purposes, I would divide it into three because these everything, almost everything you're going to learn is going to be easy to say it's gram positive or it's gram negative or it doesn't. Yeah, it's the gram positive or it's gram negative. As far as bacteria, obviously, or maybe not obviously if you haven't had micro before, which I hadn't. But so I'm saying if your bugs and with your unique features, make silly stories about them. Tell the stories to your friends. I ended up recording my stories like in a little audio recorder, and then I would run. Like so, when I'd exercise, I could just be reviewing micro and listening to my stories again, and that really helps them stick. Right now, you name a bug, hopefully I have some kind of silly mental image that pops into my mind. Then your algorithmic classifications, your bugs also need to be on there. And so, for instance, here's my gram-positive cocci. And it's a little bit busy. I don't usually like to get into this complex of a drawing, but it's really high yield. I would say I got questions from pretty much everything on this map. Throughout the year and on step one. So that's my gram-positive cocci, gram-positive rods. These, like Dr. Salcedo has good ones of these. Mine are very similar to the ones in first aid. You need to find one and commit to it. And so Dr. Salcedo kind of gave me an idea because he uses like colors. He'll say like, okay, which ones cause respiratory disease, and then he'll be highlighting like several of them that cause respiratory diseases here, and then another one over here that causes respiratory disease. What I did is I mashed all mine up, drew little miniature versions of my maps on one page. So these are pretty much all the bugs that I know in all of microbiology. And then I would be like, okay, which ones cause otitis? And then I would draw the shape of an ear. So strep pneumo does, Moraxilla catarrhalis, and H. influenza, which is down here. So I have a gram-positive cocci, a gram-negative rod, and a gram-negative cocci and a gram-negative rod, all that cause otitis media. And I actually just like drew the shape of an ear to capture those. And since I had this scanned into my computer, that made a nice answer to a flashcard. So I remembered, I don't like memorizing lists. I can do it, and sometimes I have to, and the only way I can do it when I have to is lots of repetition and making the list early in the game, so by the time the test comes around I've seen it a lot of times. But that's one of the ways I cheated on learning lists, is like just remembering shapes on my page since I had it all well defined. These are my viruses down here. I'll show you a few virus tricks. So anyway, so I talked about how to use stories to learn these features that are specific, and then use it. Oh, and I'll just mention in that, like, agars. Agars fall under that. That's a specific feature. And unique pathologies, And like rabbits, like oftentimes there's a really unique vector. Like for instance, armadillos, you need to be thinking about salmonella, and rabbits, you need to be thinking Francisella. Dogs, you're often thinking Pasteurella, that kind of thing. So those are specific things, and you want to think about them that way. And then also spend a lot of time memorizing algorithms and making algorithms the answer to your flashcard questions. And then the third sort of area are just your tests. And I found the best thing to do for learning urease, catalase, gram-positive. Please, I hope I've been redundant enough. Don't just try to memorize, okay, now I've learned all this stuff about Prevotella bug, and now I'm going to try to also memorize that he's urease negative and whatever else is positive. No, there's good mnemonics in first aid, and I would marry myself to them early and visit them often. Here's your agars, by the way. Those are pretty helpful. It's almost just like you need to have that association, like one-to-one. If somebody says Thayer Martin, they might as well be saying gonorrhea. If somebody says chocolate agar, they might as well be saying H. influenza. It's hard for you to know that when you can trust a one-to-one relationship early on when you haven't learned a lot of micro. So I'm telling you right now, like, here, this is page 148 in first aid, 2012 edition, and right here, if you see Bordet Gingu agar, it always means pertussis. See Tellurite or Loeffler, it always means corny diphtheria. So those are good to know. They're basically like synonymous. And then anyway, like I said, here's a lot of different, this is my third area, so to speak, tests or questions I can ask. Is this bug an anaerobe, or is it a la-da-da-da-da? So I would learn those by these kind of things. Good, like anaerobes can't breathe air. There you go. Those are not, that's not exhaustive of anaerobes, but those are very famous anaerobes that it makes sense to ask questions about. Okay, intracellular, encapsulated. This is super good. It matters because it has to do with their ability to infect the spleen or infect a person who's asplenic. I mean, catalase. So I'm not urease. Urease makes a little bit of sense because there's a test for it, and some urease things infect the bladder and on the stomach. Catalase, there's specific diseases that make it really helpful to know which ones are catalase positive. So yeah, that's good. Learn it like that. I think I ended up adding a few throughout the year and adjusting the mnemonic accordingly. Here's the urease positive bugs, punch K. That's the way to learn those rather than just trying to remember. I felt like I wasted so much time being lost like 10 miles down an outline and then like, am I going to remember that it was urease positive? No way. Like, there's no way I'm going to do it, and I wasted a lot of time hoping that I would, but really kind of thinking I wouldn't. So anyway, that way I kind of went through those different kinds of the kinds of knowledge that you need to familiar yourself with, and you can read this if you want. These are kind of my thoughts about oxidase and catalase and coagulase, and what I thought were the highest yield points about each of those tests. But I'll just take you a little bit through my maps. Like I said, this one is a mashup, so these are my gram-positive cocci, and I didn't write their names because I always had these maps together with the other ones. I didn't have enough room to write other names, but I could easily find, okay, this is the exact same shape, so you recognize this shape here, and like, okay, there's strep pneumo, over here strep pneumo, and now I can see the specifics that when I'm on this page, I'm more like quizzing myself, like what was in this box, what was in this box, what was in this box, and then I'm also using it to make those ear shapes and gut shapes for different things. Make which ones are causing diarrhea, draw a giant colon right here and stuff coming out of it that then the colon connects the different bugs. You know, I find that kind of thing pretty memorable. So that's how I mashed it up, and then I'll just talk to you about if you wanted to use my all these you can kind of find anywhere. Oh, here's an important thing. Okay, when you're learning bacteria, that's, well, honestly, these down here are bacteria too, but these are like exception to the normal bacteria rule because they don't fall easily into the gram-positive, gram-negative cocci and rods. So since you have that, your normal bacteria are your 4 categories, okay? And now here's a trick. Well, there's hardly any gram-negative cocci, so they're kind of easy to know. You should memorize cold what the gram-positive cocci and what the gram-positive rods are, and then make this other category your leftover category. There's just like too many. Like, there's a lot of gram-negative rods, and if on this first test, like, don't worry, by the end of the year you're going to know that those are gram-negative rods because you're going to see them in a lot of different ways. But on this first test, just go with it. like make this your leftover category, and like if I memorize all these and I have one of these bacteria that's buzzing around in my brain because I've heard of it a lot, and it's not one of those, then it's a gram-negative rod. That can help you. Okay, and then the only other thing I wanted to say was I use this for viruses. I made it and I'm really happy with it because it allowed me to remember pretty much all the stuff that Dr. Watts was rambling on and on about, and like I thought it was so impossible, and then like the last day I came up with this and it kind of pulled it all together for me. But people use happy for the DNA viruses, and I used a few colors to mean some other things, and then always bring polymerase or fail replication, and I added fail replication bad so I could get all the items in there that they hadn't included. ROBA refers to segmented viruses, and then over here I said Corona flavor to race Pacific Crest Highway, and the way that this ended up being in its columns, which column was it in, could tell me if it was enveloped or not, enveloped or naked, or if it was icosahedral or helical. So I was able to just kind of make little sound bites all over the areas of this page and remember a lot of features about viruses using it. Here's the double-stranded RNA. So those are, anyway, if you feel free to contact me if you'd like me to go through this with you. My roommate used it. I think he liked it. I don't know who else may have used it, but it served me well. It got me some questions right on step 1. So I wish you guys luck. I'm not jealous of you going through micro. I'll be having fun on the wards, but you will be in a year. So my sympathies and prayers are with you.